Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our council meeting. We'll go ahead and start off with an invocation, which we observe with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Corliss.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Morales.
Here.
Nash.
Here.
Stead.
Here.
Willetts.
Here.
All present.
And now we've got minutes for approval.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes for the meeting on September 24th.
Second. We have a motion and a second, clerk?
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willetts.
Yes.
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And now we've got the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll just point out that the item number 2, resolution 54924, is the license agreement for installation of red light cameras. And that we had a briefing on this in the work session. This will be before ACHD tomorrow, and this is an agreement that the city will sign with them that will make it possible for us to have a red light camera project, pilot project in the city. I'm really excited about this. Safety is a huge priority. We've heard from residents about their own concerns related to red light running. And so this is an important first step to realizing a goal we have related to safety in our city.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I want to point out that there is a resolution about Boise Urban Garden that is at Comba Park, which is in District 1, and I was really excited to see their good work and the city continue to help support.
It's a fun program and a great park. All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willetts.
Yes.
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Now it looks like we've got one ordinance on third reading.
Madam Mayor, I move that for the reading of ORD-26-24 be dispensed with and the record reflected has been read the third time in full.
Second. Sorry.
We have a motion and a second, clerk?
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willets.
Yes.
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries. ORD-26-24, an ordinance repealing and striking Boise City Code, Title I, Chapter 6, Section 1, Subsection B, adding a new Article B titled Office of Community Engagement to Boise City Code, Title I, Chapter 6, amending Boise City Code, Title I, Chapter 10, Article H to change the name of the department, adding a new Article L entitled Department of the City Clerk to Boise City Code, Title I, Chapter 10, and thereby creating this new city department, adding a new Article M entitled Department of Organizational Effectiveness to Boise City Code Title I, Chapter 10, and thereby creating this new city department, amending Boise City Code Title I, Chapter 7, Section 2 to repeal and strike the term ex officio, amending Boise City Code Title I, Chapter 7, Section 3, Subsection A to add new departments to this list of all city departments, repealing and striking the term ex officio from Boise City Code Title I, Chapter 7, Section 4, amending the definition of the term director in Boise City Code Title III, Chapter 1, Article A, Section 4, amending the term parking services office in Boise City Code Title VI, Chapter 1, Section 1, amending the definition of the term director in Boise City Code Title VI, Chapter 10, Article A, Section 4, repealing and striking the term parking services office from Boise City Code Title VI, Chapter 10, Article A, Section 4, amending the definition of the term director in Boise City Code Title VI, Chapter 10, Article B, Section 4, repealing and striking the term parking services office from Boise City Code Title VI, Chapter 10, Article B, approving a summary of the ordinance and providing an effective date.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that ORD-26-24 be approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Yep.
There's a lot of words in that ordinance, and sometimes it's a little confusing to see exactly what's going on. But it really does remind me of our city's vision that there's nothing we can't do better. And this is really about a reorganization within our city, trying to make sure that as the city grows, that we're growing as well and making sure that we're doing it in an organized way that reflects the needs of the community. So when you see all those words jumbled around, it's us as an organization trying to figure out how we can perform more effectively for the community that we serve. I'm so happy to support the motion.
All right, clerk?
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And now we will move into public hearings. Welcome, everybody. First up, we've got CAR 2410 on Park Center Boulevard. I'm gonna use my other sheet. So the applicant is Studio H Architects, Jessica. Great. Do we have the neighborhood association in attendance? Is Eric Berg online? Okay. Anybody from the public here to testify on this one? Alrighty, I will turn it over to Sabrina for presentation. I'll check in to see if you're in agreement or if you've got any issues with the recommendations, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The item before you is a request for a modification of a development agreement on approximately 1.6 acres in an MX1 DA zone. The subject property is located on the west side of Park Center Boulevard between Pennsylvania Street and Apple Street. In 1998, the Boise City Council approved a rezone of the subject property and the adjacent parcels from R2 to LOD and C1D with a development agreement. The development proposed at that time was comprised of a large two-story office building for a medical insurance provider, a second smaller office building, and a small retail building. The development agreement required compliance with the conceptual site plan shown on this slide and placed restrictions regarding setbacks, parking locations, building height, and building placement. On December 1st, 2023, the modern zoning code took effect and the LOD and C1D zones from the previous code were converted to the current MX1 zone. However, the restrictions of the development agreement remained in effect despite the change in the zoning designation of the property. The applicant now requests to modify the existing DA to allow the two vacant parcels located at 787 and 793 Park Center Boulevard to be developed in accordance with the standards of the MX1 zone. The Planning and Zoning Commission was supportive of the requested modification as the standards of the MX1 zone support development of neighborhood serving commercial, institutional, and residential uses that are compatible with the existing commercial uses and residential neighborhoods in the vicinity. The commission found that concerns identified by the neighborhood association during the September 9th Planning and Zoning Commission hearing are addressed by the standards of the MX1 zone. As shown on this slide, the MX1 zone promotes pedestrian-oriented streetscapes with buildings towards the street and parking to the sides or the rear. Additionally, the modern zoning code requires vehicular access points to be consolidated to the maximum extent possible, and future development of the subject property would therefore be expected to take access from the existing shared driveways from Park Center Boulevard. If the modification is approved, the applicant proposes to construct a mixed-use development containing commercial and multifamily residential uses on the property located at 787 Park Center Boulevard as shown on this slide. The applicant has not provided a development proposal for 793 Park Center Boulevard at this time. However, future development of both parcels will be subject to design review, and additional entitlements such as conditional use permits may also be required in the future depending on the nature of the development proposals. In conclusion, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the request, and I'll stand for any questions.
Sabrina.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, Sabrina. So this DA is from 1998 and this property has not been developed since then for the office spaces originally planned.
Madam Mayor, Council President, that's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I'll ask, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the report? I'm seeing a nod, so I'll put that in the record. Anything you feel you need to add? All right. Are there any follow-up questions? Want to confirm nobody from the public is here for this? Okay, I'm going to close this hearing. Thank you. I'll take a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move approval of CAR 24-10, a request to modify an existing development agreement at 787 and 793 East Park Center Boulevard of approximately 1.6 acres in an MX1 DA mixed-use neighborhood with a development agreement zone, and that the reason statement in the staff report be adopted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I had a couple of questions that were all answered in the great staff presentation, but I think that this is a great use of our MX zone, and for what it was intended, this is a walkable area nearby to grocery and fitness and jobs, and I think it's just what we're after, to see that mixed use residential development there. So look forward to seeing that project come forward.
All right.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd just also like to echo that. I think this is a great project. It's also close to 2 bus stops and the best shaved ice shack in Boise.
Oh, really?
But this is,
I
yeah.
gotta go check it out.
Yep. But no, this is a really, really good project. We need housing. This is in District 4, and just really appreciative of the work that you've done on this.
Madam Mayor, just one more. We're going to run into a few, I think, kind of weird things over the years where there was a development agreement in 1998 and then a new modern zoning code. And it's a little bit of work for our staff, I think, to navigate, like, how does one thing transfer over to the other? And so I just want to give staff a little bit of praise for working with the developer to bring something good forward. This is exactly what we want out of the modern zoning code. It's exactly what we want in an MX zone, a place where people can live, a place where people can shop and go to a coffee shop that serves other people in the neighborhood, that has the setbacks that we want to see. I mean, this is it. So good job for staff, and thank you for the developer. It will go through design review. It will come back, may look a little bit different, but what you presented with us at this point is exactly the kind of stuff that we want to see. So as you build that out, I hope that it looks like a lot like that.
Clerk, will you call the roll?
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, next up, we've got CAR 24/7 on Whitewater Boulevard. David Mosier, welcome. Good to see you. The applicant, Gail Matsumuro. Hi, Gail. Thanks for being here. We don't expect the neighborhood association, but just want to confirm that. Is anybody here to speak on this topic? Online? Nope. All right, so after Dave gives his report and we ask some questions, I'll check in to see if you agree, and we'll go from there. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The item before you tonight is a rezone of approximately 0.1 acres from R2 to R3 zones. And as you can see from the vicinity map, the site is located along Whitewater Park Boulevard across from the ITD campus and near the intersection of Whitewater Park Boulevard and State Street, which is also designated as a community activity center. The subject property is addressed at 900 and 908 North Whitewater Park Boulevard, and they contain single-family homes. It is also located at the edge of a residential neighborhood to the east and the south. The surrounding area is also served by several bus routes along State Street and bikeways. As you can see from the zoning map here, the site is located within the R2 and R3 zones, and there are MX4 zoning along State Street. The rezone is being requested since the subject property was recently approved for a property line adjustment. The record of survey adjusted the property line between the 2 parcels for a property line and boundary to align with the existing fence. However, this would create a split zone parcel on parcel A, which is in blue. And as you can see, this parcel A is also zoned R3. Parcel B in red is zoned R2, and the yellow area is the section of land being transferred. And that is the section of land that will be rezoned to R3. So it's consistent with the new parcel. In summary, the rezone complies all the required findings as per the development code. In addition, the Planning and Zoning Commission received a letter of support from the public regarding the rezone, and it recommends approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for David? I'll just check in with the applicant. Are you in agreement with the recommendation? Anything additional you'd like to add? Nope. All right, we'll add that into the record. Before I close anything from council, confirm that nobody is here to testify. Alrighty, I'll close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move approval of CR 24-7, a rezone of 0.1 acres from R2 residential compact to R3 residential urban at 900 and 908 West Whitewater Park Boulevard, and that the reason statement in the state report be adopted.
Second.
We have a motion, a
Staff-
second?
Excuse me, staff report.
Sure. Any discussion? All right, clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, and we will move on to the final item. It's an appeal of DRH 24-206 on 24th Street. We've got Richard Jarvis for the city. Hi, Richard.
Hi.
The applicant, Ryan Nunn. Is the
Madam Mayor,
applicant
Ryan-
online?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the applicant's online. Welcome, Ryan. Do we have Nina here? Sandy? Herman? All right, we have no parties of record, and I want to, and so we don't expect any public, but this is an appeal, so you've got to be a party of record, correct? Yeah, okay. So, we will hear first from the city and then from the applicant appellant, Ryan Nunn. I'll check in to see if Nina happens to be here, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Mayor McLean and council members. This is an appeal to the Historic Preservation Commission's decision to approve the application due to the added condition 1D. The subject parcel is located on the southwest corner of North 24th and West Hazel Streets. This is the front of the home with existing non-historic metal siding. The applicant stated in their letter of intent that they wanted to replace the existing siding with hardy plank siding and also indicated that there's a possibility of brick being under the existing siding. They stated that they intend to retain, preserve, and repair the existing brick, but if the brick is beyond repair, they would replace with a brand new siding that matches the rest of the dwelling. And here are the sides and rear of the residence. The Historic Preservation Commission approved the application with an added condition 1D, which stated that if brick is uncovered under the existing metal siding, it shall be retained, preserved, and repaired, and if unrepairable, shall be replaced with matching brick. The applicant filed an appeal with the Historic Preservation Commission's decision to approve due to condition 1D being placed based on the following grounds. The first ground was that the decision does not provide options, will be forced to replace brick if damaged, cannot reinstall metal siding once taken down. Staff response in summation is that the project report from the HPC hearing stated that the house's metal siding should be removed to identify the original historic siding beneath. Our guidelines require that any discovered historic material must be repaired or replaced to match the original. If the uncovered material is brick, the aluminum siding cannot be reinstalled. Staff added conditions to ensure that the final appearance aligns with the revealed historic materials. Therefore, the Commission's action is consistent with the adopted guidelines and standards, and this ground for appeal does not demonstrate an error in the Historic Preservation Commission's decision. The second ground was that the decision is cost prohibitive. Complete brick replacement is 5 times the cost of proposed lap siding in 1B. Staff's response is that though complete brick replacement would likely be more expensive than other materials, if brick is the historic material uncovered, then it must be replaced if found to be in too poor of a condition for restoration. The guidelines require that the historic material should be identified, then repaired and retained if possible. If that is not feasible, then the historic material should be replaced. Therefore, the Commission's action is consistent with the adopted guidelines and standards, and the grounds for appeal does not demonstrate an error in the Historic Preservation Commission's decision. In conclusion, the planning team recommends the City Council deny the appeal and uphold the Historic Preservation Commission's decision to approve the application and retain condition 1D. The submitted grounds for appeal do not demonstrate an error in the Historic Preservation Commission's decision. With that, staff will stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
do we know how old this property is?
I'd have to dig into.
1905?
Ryan, we're sorry. I think you might need to be muted, and we're currently asking staff questions.
I'd have to dig up the project report. I have that available, but
While you're doing that, are there other questions? And the applicant might be able to answer that question as well.
It's my understanding that it was built in 1905.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions for Richard? Thank you. Ryan, we'll go ahead and hear from you now. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Appreciate you giving me some time to speak on my behalf today. Yep, my name is Ryan Nunn. I reside at 1519 North 24th Street. And yes, this is a condition of this approval set forth by the Historic Preservation Commission regarding the replacement of our existing siding. I'm sorry if some of this is repeating here, but currently our house does have older metal siding that is in need of replacement. And as said before, we do have a suspicion that this brick may be hiding under this metal siding. We have had some brick fall out from beneath it. So as the condition states, if the brick is uncovered under the existing metal siding, it shall be retained, preserved, and repaired. And if unrepairable, it shall be replaced with matching brick. As I said in the appeal, I believe this is cost prohibitive to me and does not really provide any options once we take down this metal siding. And if we expose brick that requires replacement. We are then committed to a very costly brick replacement with really no alternatives. To come to an agreement, maybe I could propose the subsequent modifications to this condition. If brick is discovered and is repairable to the equivalent cost of a complete new lap siding project, then I will do everything it takes to retain, preserve, and repair. If the brick is not repairable in any way, which means a full replacement, then I would like all brick to be replaced by a lap siding that will conform to the Historic Preservation Commission's guidelines in condition 1B for their lap siding. I am not disputing any other conditions of approval, and I will commit to all these. I think essentially this provides me, the homeowner, with the ability to update my house, replace that metal siding while still being true to the Historic Preservation Commission's guideline for siding. I've met with neighbors on this proposition. All feedback has been positive. I'm absolutely committed to ensuring the installation of the lap siding in my home meets all necessary standards and regulations. I do appreciate you considering this request. I'm confident this change will be a positive addition to our historic neighborhood. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Ryan, this is Councilmember Jimmy Halliburton. First of all, really cute house, great neighborhood. I've ridden by there several times, so I'm very familiar with it. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out, like, isn't there a way of telling that there's brick underneath there before you pull the siding off? It seems like there would be some way of finding somebody who is an expert at these things, looking back with like historical photos or some way of actually drilling in and figuring out if there's brick before you rip all the siding off. It sounds like you know that there's some brick. Have you seen some falling below? What investigations have you done to figure out whether or not there's actually brick underneath?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Halliburton. So yes, we have had some contractors come out, but it has been said that we would need to take all metal siding off to see the extent of the brick installation, and to the extent of which the replacement repair would need to be done. So we do have, I do agree that you would think there'd be some historical documentation. We've had a hard time finding any of that. The reason that we've concluded there is brick underneath that is not only because some brick has fallen out, but also on our porch, we have about maybe 2.5 to 3 feet of brick up the wall, and also in the bedroom as well. So we would need to probably take off the bottom 2 or 3 or 4 feet of siding to see if that brick is indeed there and how what the height of it may be throughout the house.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, another question, I guess, would just be, so I think that there's 2 different reasons why you're appealing this, and one is the cost. And I'll just be very frank. I appreciate the cost burden that's there, and you know that things can be tight and inexpensive to do, but also we typically aren't looking at the cost of something as a hardship. We know that it's expensive to repair these historic houses. We know that people kind of go into it knowing that if there's a window that's going to need to be replaced, it's going to cost more in that neighborhood than it's going to cost somewhere else. And so we typically don't look at cost as a hardship. Can you explain your other appeal, your other aspect of appeal, your first one?
Yes, for the not providing any alternatives or options.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm afraid that if, in order to understand the overall cost of this project, I will have to remove all siding. If at which point I remove all siding and it needs to be replaced in total, that we might be in a position where it's cost prohibitive for us to replace all the siding, and we will have perhaps siding in a disrepaired state that might have some implications on structural integrity. So, and just to be transparent with you, and I understand what you're saying, and I respect what you're saying about the cost. And that if you do, and probably at some point, if you buy a historical home, you should be prepared for additional costs to upkeep the historical aesthetics. But yeah, the lap siding, all transparency, is maybe around 15,000 for quotes. Brick starts at around 90 to 100,000. That's starting. So that's the other side of that as well. But yes, to answer your question in short, I'm just afraid that we'll get into a position where we're unable to repair the brick or whatever's under that once we expose it. And I was just looking for an alternative for lap siding to be an option, but I'm not leaning on that. And I would rather repair the brick if that's the potential.
Great. Thank you for the extra context.
Madam Mayor.
Mhm.
Ryan, what is your understanding of if this brick needs to be replaced? What historical elements need to be retained in the new brick? Are you aware of those design standards? Or is it
Yeah.
just brick in general? Might be a better
I
question
think
for
there's
staff.
some additional architectural, I don't know how you would say this, design to the brick, perhaps some archways or other things under that would add additional cost to the project. So it's not just a standard square type of brick house. There might be some, additional design that would require a contractor to, require more money from us on that.
Madam Mayor, could I put that question to staff?
Mhm.
Staff, if this brick needs to be replaced, what are the standards around what type of brick might be used in replacement? Is it just any brick? Do we try to use some historical element from the historical design? Like what is the standard there?
Material wise, it can be a new material, but the new brick should be roughly the same color, of course, the same size, but these houses were built late enough that the standard modular brick is the same size. So it just is pretty much a color match is what we would be looking for, just to get that look of the brick. If let's say all the brick is gone and none of it can be salvaged, and sometimes bricks can be removed. If the faces spalled off, they can be removed and reversed and reset back in. So there can be some reuse, and some of the brick just may be in good condition. But any replacement brick should be a close visual match. It doesn't have to be the exact same chemical composition or whatever, but it should just look the same. And as far as details, I mean, that's unknown. Since it's all covered, nobody knows yet what kind of detailing is underneath there as far as arches, suppositions, and things like that. It's just we're in an unknown zone.
Is it fair to say that we're trying to preserve not maybe the historical character of the existing brick, but the historical aesthetic should it need to be replaced?
That would be the situation. It should look, so that the issue with buildings being covered with, especially metal siding and other sidings, is that can create a microclimate. It can cause deterioration, which is probably what they're going to encounter at least a little bit of. But the goal at the end of the day is once you uncover or remove a non-historic additive material, then what you have behind that is the historic house, so to speak. And that's what it looked like and what it kind of should be returned to look like to the greatest degree possible, preferably with repair, and if not, with replacement materials that match what is uncovered.
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
I have a question for the applicant. Ryan, this is Kathy Corliss, council member. If you're estimating that you take down the siding, the metal siding, and the cost of the project will be close to that $90,000 you had mentioned, is that something you would move forward with, or is that something you think you'd continue with the metal siding?
Yes, so if we take the metal siding off and we find that maybe the way they attach that metal siding to the brick has put it in a state of where it needs to be completely replaced, we would leave the metal siding off. I don't think there's a way to really re-adhere it once you take it off. So we would leave it in the brick in a state of disrepair.
So I've got to ask a question, Ryan. This is Lauren McLean. What you were asking to do was to replace the siding that's covering brick, the current metal siding. You want an upgrade by replacing it with lab siding. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, yes, thank you for that question. What I'm asking is that I would like to replace both the metal siding and any potential brick if it requires a full replacement with lap siding. If the brick can be repaired, let's say to the cost of what a full lap siding replacement would be, let's say around 15,000, then I'm happy to repair the brick. But I do not want to have the burden of a entire brick replacement at the cost of 90 to 100,000.
But this brick will be covered by siding?
It would be taken down, as I understand from the contractor. So as they remove the metal siding, I believe that it probably will damage the brick to a point where it will need to be repaired or replaced. So
Gotcha. Okay.
it's my understanding the brick is not part of the structural integrity either. It's more of a facade, so it can be taken down. And so both the metal and the brick could be replaced with lap siding.
Gotcha. All right, any further questions for the applicant? Is anybody
Mayor,
here?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess maybe I'm a little bit confused. I thought the original proposal was that the metal siding was going to come down. You were going to leave the brick up there and then you were going to put hardy board shingles on top of it. Question mark.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It is confusing. Yeah, it was the way the contractor explained it to me is that they would take the brick down as well. However, if that is a compromise that we can come to or something that would move this project forward by leaving the brick and placing the metal with the lap siding, then I'd be happy to move forward with that.
Great. So just to clarify, the original application was that you were going to take the metal siding off. Even if there was brick underneath, you were going to put hardy board shingles back up there. If there wasn't brick underneath, then that's what you'll do. But if there is brick underneath, that's when the city's saying that you have to preserve the brick. But if there isn't, you'll put the hardy board on.
That's right. That's correct. Councilman.
Great. And then I guess a follow-up question for staff. So if that's the plan, is that if there isn't entirely brick underneath there, then he's going to put these hardy board shingles on there, which I think would meet whatever we're trying to have it meet. But what if there's some brick? Like what if one of the walls is brick or not all of the walls?
I heard him mention that in the porch area, there was an area that looked like it was about 3 feet of brick. Maybe you can elaborate on this more. And then above that wasn't brick. Perhaps this is all unknown because it's all covered. That's what exists all around. And that would, if that be the case, then that might be a lesser cost. It's kind of an odd look, but it could have had a brick a few feet and then the rest was siding. So in that kind of case, maybe that quantity of brick is repairable, but generally if the goal is when you uncover a non-historic covering material, what you see is kind of what you get. And that is, it informs one of the original aesthetic and the appearance of the house. And that appearance and those materials should be the basis of the repair, work, and replacement per the Secretary of the Interior standards and our guidelines.
Sure. So what happens if you take the metal off and all the brick is in real bad shape and it's crumbling? Is that a safe place to be in? Is the structure of the house still there because it has framing on the inside? Or if that brick is crumbling, do you have a failed structure?
I would say by the 1920s, it was probably a wood frame like it is done currently. Earlier than the 1800s, we might have what's called a multiple wife brick construction, where it's multiple layers of brick and that's your entire wall is brick. But this house is most likely a wood framed house with a brick veneer. So it's that layer of brick, a gap, and then usually a gap, there should be a gap, and then the studs that actually frame it. So it is a veneer, most likely a veneer. I would definitely say about 25.
So probably not a structural issue.
Probably not a structural issue. The crumbling and the parts that have been are beyond repair can be chipped out, removed, and supported from the bottom before you do that, please. Chipped out, removed, and then repaired and replaced with similar materials.
Yeah, so a follow-up question there. Have we ever gone about this in a different way where it's not sort of like surprise, like this is what it's going to be? I mean, to me, I shouldn't say this on record. I would pull the metal sheeting up, I would look underneath, and I would put it back down.
Yeah.
Like, I have to imagine that
After
at
saying,
some,
oh, no.
yeah, at some point along the way that like we've uncovered what's underneath before we've made a decision on what it's going to look like. To me, like it absolutely makes sense that we should keep this as historic brick if that's what it is. But when we have no idea what's underneath yet, it seems like a question mark to me. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, in the past, have we ever made sure that we understood what we were working with before we made a decision about how it's going to turn out?
I can't speak beyond 2 years, but I can. I've had other similar applications to this one where it was a house covered with replacement metal siding later on, and we have written similar conditions for other projects that it's this whole take down, let's see, go from there approach. I had one property that there was still the laundry room. You could still see that it was shingles. So it's like, it's shingles. You know the answer, but it is kind of that the unknown, the mystery of having that material covering. And yeah, there may be ways to just peel back a few pieces selectively. Maybe they can look into getting a contractor that can take that route. Borescoping is another thing that people have done. I've done before. Borescope through buildings where you have a little microscope on the end of a wire and you kind of explore what's behind that and can sort of see it and get a sense.
Yeah,
without
that
the
makes
complete removal.
that makes sense. I've got another question for the applicant, but I can pause to see if anybody else has any questions for staff.
Madam Mayor, I have a question for staff. So we're talking about uncovering by removing a non-conforming material. Is there an avenue for covering the non-conforming material? Or no?
Oh, like adding something over what is there
Yeah,
now.
and I don't know about the construction, whether that's actually possible, but is there an allowable route for something like that?
I don't know how one should approach that. The crux of this is there is a historic facade behind that metal, and it's just unknown. And to put another kind of facade on top of another kind of facade that's on the original facade is probably for a few reasons, like microclimates and causing further deterioration, is probably just not a good idea. It's like, don't put 7 roofs on your house. Rip off your roof and put a new roof on. Because my grandfather had 7 roofs on his house the last time he had his roof put on. So keeping on and keeping on is probably not a terribly good approach. And I can't see how the guidelines could support a conjectured add-on material on top of the add-on material.
We'll take questions for the
Yeah,
applicant.
Madam Mayor, Ryan, if you wouldn't mind one more, have you looked into working with any sort of additional contractors to investigate what else is underneath there, whether that's putting in a camera, whether it's boring in? It seems like there's some steps that you might be able to take that would let you know what's underneath before you jump into it. Have you explored all those options at this point?
Not all the options presented here, as far as boring is concerned, but kind of the feedback that we've got is it's an all or nothing type of thing. I think you can understand that, yeah, we really don't know what we're working with until we remove a good quantity of that metal siding. But I am absolutely open to other options. I just know that that metal siding appears to be adhered in a way that once you kind of remove that, it's not going back up. So, maybe exposing a corner or something that's not street facing could be an option. It's just, that area would be in probably disrepair until we come up with a solution.
Great. And I've already said that the cost I don't think is the concern here, because of this, we could point to any single historic house that we've ever done and say that this cost prohibitive. And so I think it is sort of that surprise of what's underneath. It does seem like we've dealt with that before. Yeah, I guess I don't have a follow-up question at this point. I'm just thinking out loud, trying to wrap my head around this. I guess I'm thinking if I was the applicant, I sure would be wanting to find out what's underneath before I peel the siding off.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
I have a question for the applicant. Thank you so much for, first of all, bringing us some other alternatives. Can you talk a little bit about the cost differential between, putting up the siding and then having to repair the brick? I know you said it could be up to $100,000. What would be the cost for the siding that you're proposing?
So yeah, basically the quotes that we have so far, it looks like the high end of the siding, and that is following all the guidelines proposed by the commission, the historic commission, of course. The high end of that would be 30,000. If we were considering full brick replacement, that starts at around 90,000. And I do respect and understand that that is not a consideration, as Councilmember Halliburton brought up, but it is factoring into my consideration of the reciting and whether or not to take the metal down or not. So thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Mayor, one more question for staff. So here's the deal. I don't see an error that the Historic Commission made at this point. I think that we've looked at things like this before in the past. We've made similar decisions. If there wasn't siding on this house, if there wasn't the aluminum siding on this house right now, and the walls were crumbling down, we would make them replace it with brick because that's what we do in historic areas. So to me, it's pretty clear that like we are following the code. We are following the rules. These are the ways that we're supposed to do it. It's this really weird, oops, there's a surprise issue. I guess my question for staff is, I don't see a path forward besides denial. We have the applicant saying, hey, you could have this condition where if it's at this cost, then we'll do this much. That doesn't feel comfortable to me either, because then, that seems like, a slippery slope for all sorts of different historic stuff. Is there any other options here beyond denying or approving this condition?
One thing I was just thinking of, I don't know if the applicants can speak to this, but there's a product that's called veneer brick, and it's thin. It's little thin slivers of brick that can probably have a lesser cost. So that could be a possibility. That gives us the appearance of brick. It's actual brick, but they're just thin, not the full brick units, the 3 5/8 by whatever, I forget. It's been too long, I don't remember the numbers. But maybe that's a possible approach for something that they could use as something that gives the appearance of brick, because it is brick, but it's a thinner veneer brick and takes less cost to apply potentially.
Yep. You're essentially saying that the applicant can explore other options that are potentially a little bit cheaper.
There may be. I just don't know if he's looked at veneer brick yet.
Yeah, I guess what I'm
We
asking,
generally wouldn't want to see veneer brick, but we could make an exception because it'll look like a brick wall when it's done.
yeah, I guess what I'm asking, is there another path forward as far as like a decision that we're making here? Can the person find out what's underneath before something like this gets approved? If I were this applicant, I would be desperately trying to pull my application right now, so that I could figure out what was underneath before I move forward with something like this. And so I think that that's where my mind is. If I was the applicant, I would be saying I would like to defer this to a later date so that I could do some investigation, or that's something that council could say, like, we'll defer, but it's going to be up to you because we're not going to approve it within the guidelines that are pretty clear.
Yeah, I would
I'm
say
going to jump in here because I think that this isn't necessarily a question that's appropriate for staff to
Sure.
answer. There is a third way that council has, and I've asked legal to walk council through this in the future. In the code book and under the section of appeals, you will find that there's an alternative for council to substitute their own conditions and findings. So you can uphold an appeal while substituting different conditions. And that is rightly before this council as a quasi judicial body, is to look at the information that was provided, to look at the debate by the citizens committee and the motion, and then decide if there are ways that you can come up with an alternative if you're not happy with what you're seeing by substituting findings and conditions yourself in that. Staff can take any other questions, but they're not in a position where they can answer that. That's a procedural council answer, which is why I gave it. Further questions for staff? The applicant does have a rebuttal time, so Ryan, if you would like to spend some time wrapping up, you're welcome to.
I don't think I have much more to say. I really do appreciate the open discourse about this. Thank you for having an open ear and considering this request, Madam Mayor and council members. I think you understand my position clearly. I do want to work with the Historic Society. I just don't want to put a house or myself in a financial compromising position where I would leave the house in disrepair. Definitely open to any options or deferrals. Maybe I can look into the veneer as well. I just want to maintain the historic appeal of the house at the same time, not investing, a good chunk of the percentage of the actual house cost just into the siding alone. So I thank you all for your time today.
Anything further? You're here. Sorry, I didn't see you raise your hand. Come on up. I messed up. That's all right. I missed that you probably raised your hand when I asked if anybody was here for this one. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
It's okay. So my name is Dominique Clifford, and I have lived on the block that the nuns live on for 50 years.
That means that you were a child.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right.
So I currently still live on this block, to put it in perspective. I grew up one house away. When my husband and I got married, we actually bought the house behind the nun's house that was originally part of that property. So it was subdivided years and years and years ago. It was the carriage house to the nun's house.
Oh, wow.
And we lived in that and raised our daughter in that for 20 years with my parents next door. We subsequently sold that house. Now it's been 12 years, I think. And we built a house on the other side of my parents' house on the same lot.
I remember that.
And so we still live on this street. So I currently live at 1530 North 25th Street. I grew up at 2413 Hazel Street, and we resided at 2417 Hazel, which is directly behind the nun's home. That house has had the siding all the way down the way it exists now for 50 years. So I grew up with friends in that house. I babysat in that house. Never in my life have I seen brick on that house. And talking to my mom, she said it's never had brick. Yes, it's under, I would assume it's underneath the siding. 2417 next door also has aluminum siding. It has been painted. We painted it twice. And we did want to remove it years and years ago in the 90s. We had a similar issue once. I don't know if anybody has aluminum siding on their house, but once you peel part of it, you can't actually put it back. So the idea that you can sort of look up underneath it is a lot tougher with aluminum siding. I will say my mom's house next door has old hardy siding. Ours is stucco and hardy siding, hardy board siding. And as a neighborhood, or as our block, I don't know that we even have any house on our block with brick. It has had siding all the way down for 50 years. So if we're looking at things in a historic view, I know that the historic district itself says 50 years or older is sort of that historic idea. We're at sort of that 50-year mark with the current siding that it is. So those of us that live there, for them to replace everything.
I'm sorry. I'm
with
gonna
hardy board-
have to cut you off. You aren't a party of record, and so we can't have you testify. I did ask the question at the beginning and point out there were no parties of record, and that it wasn't. I was using wonky speak. I'm so sorry. But because you weren't at the historic commission and did not submit an email, you're not a party. And because this is an appeal, we can only hear from the people that were involved from the beginning. I'm so sorry. Thank you for being here and for taking all the time. Appreciate it. I'm gonna just check in if there's anything else, given that somebody was just standing up. Although no, I can't, Ryan, because I shouldn't have had her come on up. So I'm gonna go ahead and close the hearing, striking that statement from the record. Ryan's rebuttal remains the last part of the hearing, and we'll put it over to council. Sorry, everybody. Sorry about that.
Madam Mayor, I will take a stab at this. So I move that the appeal of DRH 24-206 be denied and that the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission to approve the application with.
Can you start over? I didn't hear
Okay.
the first part. So if
Yeah,
you just
so that the appeal be denied, but that we, but I'm looking for a replacement condition to the condition in question that would with a condition that supports that if the brick is unrepairable, it may be replaced with the hardy board siding.
so you're proposing a substitute.
Yeah,
Condition.
substitute condition for the condition in question with one that would allow unrepairable brick to be replaced with the hardy board siding.
All right. I'll see if there's a second.
Second.
And then I've got a question for legal. Does the condition also need to include a return of findings that supports the substitute condition? Okay. All right.
And that staff come back with revised findings.
Are you good with that change?
Yes.
All right. So the seconder concurs. Discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just,
that you? You.
so, I'm not finding error with their decision in conditioning to adhere to the historic standards and preserve the original character of the home. But I know that the hardy board siding is also an approved material within the historic district, and would also fit the historic character of the neighborhood and even the block that it's on. So I support the Historic Commission's decision, and also think that adding in this option continues to preserve the goals of the historic district.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, question for the motion maker. Will you state again what the condition was? I think the condition was if the brick is unrepairable.
The original condition is that if it's unrepairable, it be replaced by brick. So I'm substituting that to be, if it's unrepairable, that it may be also replaced by the hardy board siding.
Yeah, my question is I'm trying to figure out like what is the definition of unrepairable? The applicant earlier made a statement of if it was going to cost over a certain amount, which I think was, the cost of what doing the hardy board was going to do in the beginning, that they would do it by brick. So I think that I'm in support of the motion. I'm trying to figure out a way to make sure that we can understand at what point it becomes irreparable.
I would say I don't have, Madam Mayor, I don't have a great answer to that question, but I feel like the term unrepairable was in the original condition, so I don't find either if we were supporting the original conditions or the new conditions, I don't see a difference there. I think my goal with this, I think this is pretty creative condition here, is that if there is historic brick that can be preserved, that seems very highly consistent with the goals of historic preservation. If we're trying to preserve a specific aesthetic that has not been seen in quite some time there, with new materials that are not historic in nature, I think that feels less consistent with the goals of historic preservation. So that's why I'll be supporting the motion.
Madam Mayor, and I can confirm the original condition does state if it's unrepairable, it shall be replaced with matching brick. So it is, I can see that this could cause a little bit more confusion, but as to what's unrepairable, so happy to continue that conversation if we have to narrow that scope.
Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor.
Yes. Yes, sorry. Yeah. Lucy?
Oh, okay. I'm going to be supporting the motion. I appreciate Councilwoman Stead's attempt here to try to find a way to make this work for all the reasons that everyone has said already. But I think this is a great place to land, and just appreciate the applicant coming to us with, understanding that this is a historic district, but also that this really is roulette at this point. And so I think we need to give a place for this to land, and I appreciate the motion. I think it's very well done.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, I also will be supporting the motion, and I appreciate the motion maker coming with a solution that will be viable for the homeowner and for the homeowner to come and to discuss other options and being flexible on what they're willing to do with their home while understanding that it is located within a historic preservation. I think this is a good option, and I'll be supporting the motion.
Anything additional? All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
All right, there is nothing further to come before council. I'll take a move to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.